Hi, so I'm going to have a look at the Demon Hunter here. The reason for this is, again, a bit like with the Warlock. I'm checking out which alts I'd like to do, primarily for the purposes of professions, but I also need a main alt, which I'll use for split runs, assuming split runs are going to be a thing for raiding, which it sounds very much like they will be. I had thought of this. Now, I have to say, just straight from the bat, it is not as encouraging as I thought it would be for the new hero spec. The Demon Hunter, not only is it a new class, but also it's a class that people have been asking for a very long time. So you'd have thought they'd have absolutely gone to town on it in the way that they did with Death Knights and with Monks, the last two, the two new classes that they have introduced since the game came out. Hasn't quite worked like that. Now, what I'll do, just to give you an overview, because of course, you know, what's good for one isn't good for another. We'll go through the abilities. Now, most of the damage dealing abilities are down here, which is not all of them. You have to bear in mind this one here and this one here are actually just down to items. This is an effect of a trinket I'm equipped with. This is an effect of an elixir type thing that you pick up whilst you're doing the Demon Hunter starter area. And of course the question might well have occurred to you, why aren't I showing you from the starter area? The main reason being, I just think it's spoilers for no good reason. It's the starter area, of course, if you're interested in finding out what happens, other people will have done videos on that. And it's what you'd expect it to be. There's nothing really amazing there that you need to see. I'm not saying it's bad. It's not. It's fine, but it's what you'd expect it to be. Similarly, with the quest to get your legendary, there's not a great deal to it. Basically, someone just says, "Here, pick that up." There's a couple of things to fight, but yeah, there's nothing really to it. It's not exceptional. It's nothing special. So at this point, I'm like level 102. I've already put a few things onto my artifact weapons, which are modifying these abilities, which I'll go through. And of course, I've got a few talents. Unlike, and this is a bit mean, I don't know whether they intend to change this. Like if I created a level 100 character of an existing class, I would have all these talents filled in. All of them. The only character customization that's needed is on the artifact weapons. But poor old Demon Hunter at the moment is only getting them once you level 100, you got a couple, and then it's every 2 levels after that. They haven't even done this last set. This may just be alpha. This may not be how it's going to be when it all goes live. We'll have to see. Certainly when Monks, well, Death Knights, let's say, Death Knights with the other hero class, in other words, the one that you don't have to start from level 1. And they ended up making it so that with the quests you got talents every now and then, but that by the time you got to a particular level, once you'd finished the starter area, you would have the same amount of talents as everyone else. So this is different. But anyway, let's just go through the abilities. So your resource is something called Chaos. Fury, sorry. Chaos is the damage you do. Fury. And a lot of these abilities use Fury. And you build Fury with Demon's Bite, which is, you know, just something you can spam. A bit like Sinister Strike for rogues, you could argue. Generates a random amount of Fury. It says here between 20 and 30. So you spam that a little bit, and then you could use Chaos Strike as your main consumer. The one you want to use off cooldown is the Eye Beam, does a lot of damage. You have an AoE ability here, Blade Dance. You have another one here. It says this is Throw Glaive, which works from range. Does a certain amount of physical damage, and then it says can ricochet to 4 additional enemies. Now, in actual fact, I think it's 2. The reason it's 4 at the moment is because I put an ability on my weapons, which of course everyone will get at some point. So that effectively becomes an AoE ability as well. This one you use to vault away from people, and it reduces their movement speed. So you can use this, get away from people, reduce movement speed, immediately follow up with this. This is an ability from the glaives as well. You just fire your glaives at them, does a certain amount of chaos damage, and if you use it again, you leap to your opponent. You don't get much use out of this in solo play, but perhaps when you're sort of... I suppose what you could do is you could use this, vault away from them, glaives, and then use that again to get back into melee range. Fell Rush is like, it's a bit like Roll for monks. It's a speedy bit. You've got 2 charges of it. There is a talent that you can take in the first row somewhere. Yeah. So if you take this talent, you gain 25 Fury if you damage at least 1 target. So you can use that as an opener. At the moment, I have it on this to increase the duration of the I-beam because that is the main damage dealing ability. That's it for the main damage dealing abilities. Then you have a few other abilities. You have Blur, which is basically like a crap version of God, my brain's gone blank now. Evasion for rogues. It gives you a certain amount of dodge, 50% dodge for 3 seconds, but if you're doing damage to something, you can increase it up to 10 seconds. 1 minute cooldown. You've got an interrupt, but this is on a 20-second cooldown. Now, a lot of melee have 12-second cooldown, or 15-second, really. It's shamans get 12-second early. This is 20, and that's interesting. Then you have an AoE stun, but the problem with this AoE stun, one, it's 1 minute cooldown, but AoE stun, fair dues. But secondly, it requires resource, and it requires 30 Fury. So you have, if you need to plan to use this, it's not something you can use on a trigger because you might not have the 30 Fury when you have to use it. In a raid situation, you might have to watch out for this. And then your main cooldown is Metamorphosis. This does what the old demonology thing really did. You sort of leap into something, turn into a big old demon, do extra damage. Lasts for 30 seconds. There is a talent that you can extend it with. Feed the demon. Increase the duration of your metamorphosis by 5 seconds every time you consume a soul fragment. Soul fragments are produced every time you kill something. So you'd have to be killing, to get used to that talent, you'd have to be killing things quite regularly. And that's it. That's actually your abilities. Some of the talents are abilities themselves, so you might get some more. Now, just to show you how some of this works, and I'll show you some of the main disadvantages. So I-beam there is pretty good. It's decent damage. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this at the moment. What you see that does is it heals me up. This is actually one of the bad things about this class. That is our only way of self-healing. Our only way. So if you're fighting against something tough, you have no way of increasing.
I need to target something first.
Let's just try this actually. Show you that. Glaive, and then that again. Bounce into it. We have no way of healing ourselves up against a single tough target. Against multiple mobs, we just have to kill. We just focus one down, the weakest one down, and keep doing that, and it's sort of okay. But that is a real weakness, this lack of self-heal, because the blur itself will only last so long. That's no good against, unless you've got a lot of abilities. You can see I'm losing a lot of health here. Not a lot. Okay, I could use blur to dodge, but what I'm actually going to do, and it goes away from you as well. It's not like you get a heal when you kill something.
It's too far away.
So you can see here, I've just fought 2 mobs. Okay, fair enough. Could have used that to reduce some of my damage. But I've used 2 mobs. I've picked up the soul fragments in each case, and I'm not at full health. The only way to get myself at full health is sit down and eat. I'm not going to say we're the only class. I haven't played all the classes in Legion. But if we compare it to Warlords of Draenor, we are not the only class by any means to have no self-heals, because mages didn't as well. I'm not sure. I'm just going to try that blur. I'm not sure if they still don't. I'm guessing they don't. But that puts them into the same category, basically. It's very unsatisfactory. And as I say, literally, when you are fighting a single tough mob, then it creates problems because you cannot get any self-healing during the fight at all. It's just not happening. And the fact you have to chase after the bloody thing.
I need a target.
It's a madness, but I'm not going to keep going on about that anyway. And the other thing, of course, we've got is our spectral sight. So famously, we can see through walls with this. See, through the tree, no problem at all. I can still see you. I see you. That lasts for as long as that lasts for. Cool down 30 seconds. And then the last thing just to show, I suppose, would be Metamorphosis. I've got the talent that finishes cooldown on all my abilities, so that I'm not in my very powerful cooldown without any of my major damage dealing abilities ready just at that time, so that helps with that one. Now, what we'll just do, we'll just, let's go beat that one up. Oops, wrong one. I've changed some of my key bindings around very recently. I'm forgetting what's what. The other thing, as I say, just to sort of a little bit negative, it is quite limited. Some of it is born of the fact that we don't have a lot of these talents yet. Like I could say at the moment for AoE, it's a very limited because all I can do is every 10 seconds throw a glaive at them. All right, that can hit 5 people. We've got our Blade Dance. You know, I mean, strikes all nearby enemies for a decent amount of damage, fair enough, but it's 12-second cooldown. Gives us a dodge chance of 100%, but for 1 second. Really? So let's have a look at the talents. So talents can sort of expand this range a little bit. We can increase the damage of Fell Rush by 50% and gain 25 Fury when it damages at least one target. So as I say, we could use this to, as we approach something, not just to charge near it, but to charge through it, would do a bit of damage, get ourselves some Fury to start ourselves off. I was using that for a little while. This one, Blade Dance, deals an additional 1000% weapon damage to the first target struck. So again, if it's one of these situations where maybe it's a one main target and you've got a load of adds to AoE, sort of like, I suppose, Mythic Iskar, where the Phantasmal Resonance will take a load of damage, but you still do a load of damage to the adds as well, fine. And the one I'm using at the moment just increases the duration of the I-Beam. That's your major damage ability by 50%, so just basically increasing its damage by 50% as long as it lasts the full duration. Next here, so we've got Prepared. So we can reduce the cooldown of Vengeful Retreat, which is this ability here. We just sort of blast away from things, a bit like a Disengage for Hunters, and it gives them a slow as well. And it can generate some like a Fury over a certain amount of time, 6 seconds after we've used it as well. Demon Blades. I had a bit of an embarrassing moment with Demon Blades. I used this thinking, oh, this will be good for generating extra Fury. What happens if you take this is this disappears. Now, when I took this, when I got to level 100, I took it, and it was round about the same time I got an upgraded set of glaives. It may have even been the artifact ones, I can't remember. But I don't think it was actually, no, I think it was blue ones. And I went around, and I was even saying in guild, it's not working. My Demon's Bite stopped working. Stop working. And I kept trying to replace it. I was doing all sorts of things. It wouldn't work. And I said, all I can do is auto attack. And look, I didn't read it properly down. Replaces Demon's Bite. So if you use this, you don't have Demon's Bite. What you do have, you're auto attacking to generate your Fury. The problem is, at the moment, it generates a piss poor amount of Fury. It's really crap. Tuning hasn't been done yet. Presumably if they keep this in, they'll tune it so it generates more Fury. But at the moment, it's so little. I mean, if it was generating decent amounts of Fury, I wouldn't have minded. But it wasn't. I was really struggling until I actually read the tooltip properly. A Master of the Glaive, throw glaive, does an additional, so, you know, that's this thing. Additional 100% damage against enemies above 90% health. So use it on your starter, does double damage. And the cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds each time it deals damage. I'm not sure how useful that is realistically, because okay, it's useful on the opener, but they're very quickly going to be below 90% health, and using it after that isn't going to be all that amazing. So I'm not sure how we envisage that being useful. So at the moment, this is, as far as I'm concerned, the only real one. I mean, we could try this if we were going. I mean, where I'm questing at the moment, there's not many AoE packs. It's all 1s and 2s really. Maybe if there was more smaller mobs, I might give that a go. Next one, Demon. I've just, as I say, done this one. So when I use Metamorphosis, which is a 6-minute cooldown, it's a hell of a cooldown. So it's to be hoped it does a lot of damage. But again, like I noticed, you want to get your maximum use out of it. So just making sure everything's... like if I just use I-Beam or something like that, I don't want to be waiting for that to come back up. So it just finishes off the cooldown on everything. That seems useful to me. Bloodlet, though, bleed damage. Again, could be useful on boss fights. Throw glaives cause targets to bleed for 106% of the damage inflicted. I suppose it might synergize quite well with that one, but again, only for the first chuck. This one is surely useless on a boss fight after the first few seconds, as indeed it is on any fight. If this effect is reapplied, any remaining damage will be added to the new Bloodlet. In other words, if you do it again, because you know your Throw Glaives has what, a 10-second cooldown, whereas this ability, like, it does the dot over 18 seconds. So in theory, you're going to keep overwriting it. But what it's saying is you will never lose damage as a result of using your your Throw Glaive on cooldown, which is good. Feed the Demon. Increase, this is the one I was talking about, increase the duration of your Metamorphosis by 5 seconds every time you consume a Soul Fragment. Problem with this is you have to have a lot of weak mobs so that you will be collecting Soul Fragments on a regular basis. The other thing, as I say, these Soul Fragments, they don't land at your feet, so you just sidestep and pick it up. It goes like some yards away, so you've got to run around collecting them up as well. That whole Soul Fragment mechanic is pretty bad, so I'm not liking this one at the moment, and there are very few situations when you're going to be having this anyway. I mean, when would you... this would be you using in a dungeon, say, Metamorphosis on trash. I mean, why would you do that? Next tier, which I'm not up to yet, Desperate Instincts. Automatically trigger Blur. So this one, I mean, I don't use it a lot. Maybe if I had this, it means that you can, every time I naturally fall below 30%, it will just automatically trigger, and it can only do that every 30 seconds. It's basically the lazy man's use of this. The only difference being that this has a 1-minute cooldown, whereas this way you could get it using every 30 seconds perhaps, but you have to wait for yourself to get below 30% health, so I'm not sure about that. Nether Walk. Increase movement speed by 100% and become immune to damage but unable to attack. Lasts 5 seconds. Replaces Blur. So a super defensive, only lasts 5 seconds. Allows you to run away, I guess. Allows you to get away. Can't do any damage in that time, but it's not the only defensive in the game that does that. So, I mean, that's, you know, maybe useful. Soul Rending. 100% leech while Metamorphosis is active. But again, Metamorphosis is a very long cooldown. It takes a long time to recharge. You use it as a damage one, and when you're wanting to put out most damage does not necessarily mean you need healing at all. I don't see that as being good. I don't see that as being useful at all, really. You're not going to use Metamorphosis defensively unless you absolutely have to, because it's 6-minute cooldown. If you're on a boss fight, when you've got a certain amount of time in, it's likely you'll have used Metamorphosis on cooldown anyway, or you need to save it for a specific phase. You can't be using it just when you fancy doing some extra self-healing. Next, so I really think like Nether Walk is the only sensible one from that one, and it stops you attacking. So it's emergency use only, even though it's 1.5-minute cooldown, which sounds great. Well, it sounds all right, especially as a Paladin player used to my Bubble, which has a 5-minute cooldown. This sounds decent, except in Bubble, of course, I can attack. This one you can't. Nemesis increases damage you inflict against the target by 10% for 2 minutes. So another cooldown, damage dealing cooldown. When the target is slain, you will inflict 10 additional damage against all creature types matching the original target. That seems unnecessarily specific to me. But it's a damage cooldown, isn't it? Especially in a raid setting on a boss. I mean, you're not going to get this target slain thing, is it? You're likely to use it on a boss, aren't you? I suppose where there's important adds that have to die, you could use it on those and then get that ability from it as well. So, yeah, maybe. Chaos Cleave. Chaos Strike hits an additional target. So again, In an AoE situation, or 2-target cleave situation at least, it means you've got more than just this on a 10-second cooldown and this on a 12-second cooldown. You actually have a main damage dealing ability that will hit an additional target as well, which is all to the good. Momentum, your Fell Rush, Blade Dance and Vengeful Retreat increase your damage done by 15% for 4 seconds. For Fell Rush and Vengeful Retreat, sounds okay. As I say, with Vengeful Retreat, you've got to make best use of this time, as I said, by using this ability to mark your target, then use this away, then immediately get back to it. Don't even do the glaive toss, the throw glaive. Immediately get back to it. And then it might be a very short duration one, because Vengeful Retreat you can use every 15 seconds. It doesn't sound too bad. I don't see the benefit on Blade Dance, because Blade Dance itself lasts a few seconds. So really it's probably just buffing the Blade Dance itself, which, alright, fine, fair enough. But what you could easily do is, for the Vengeful Retreat, as I say, mark it with Fury of the Illidari, Vengeful Retreat away, immediately mark again, get back in, then do your Blade Dance if necessary. That would all sound good to me. Or more realistically, what you do is carry on attacking for a couple more seconds, then when it's worn off, then do Blade Dance, because that's affected by it as well. And of course, you've also got your Fell Rush. I mean, you've got 2 charges of this with a 10-second recharge. You could actually be maintaining this buff a reasonable amount of time. So, on a single target fight, I can see this being useful. Maybe juggling. Maybe it'll feel a bit like juggling quite a lot of the time, spinning plates. But I can see that getting a lot of use. This one starts to look a little bit less useful. I can imagine though, maybe on a fight, I don't know, I have to see. On fights where there are important adds, and maybe you use it on those, but 2-minute cooldown, is that going to make it weaker than Momentum? I think it will. I actually think, I don't see that coming out on top, really. Hold on a minute. No, I'm misreading this. Increases the damage you inflict against the target by 10% for 2 minutes. So actually, although it's got a 2-minute cooldown, it lasts for 2 minutes as well. Okay, that is now a lot stronger than I thought. Decisions. Well, we'll have to just try them out when we get there. Improved Chaos Nova, the final tier that has been released at the moment. Reduces the cooldown of your Chaos Nova. That is the stun, the AoE stun. So reduce it to, like, it'd be a 40-second cooldown, which is nice. Still uses Fury though. I would rather have something that means it didn't have a resource cost in there as well. Swallow Your Soul. Consuming a soul fragment grants 50 Fury. Not that useful on boss fights. Maybe more useful in dungeons, perhaps. Call the Weak. You inflict additional chaos damage against slowed and incapacitated targets. Well, you do have a way of slowing them with your Vengeful Retreat. Obviously, we're not talking boss fights here now, are we? But, you know, when leveling or when doing some dungeons, this could be useful. And we don't know about the rest, so we'll just have to wait and see. So that's where we are with the Demon Hunter at the moment. It's a bit uninspiring as things stand. There's scope for a lot of changes, though. This is what I will say. I was talking to someone who was planning on playing Demon Hunter as main in the next expansion. And they're thoroughly unimpressed with it. And I sort of mentioned, well, I felt that during Wrath, the Death Knight changed a hell of a lot. I mean, when I started playing Death Knight in Wrath, Frost was the tanking spec. It still had dual wield like abilities in it, but it was most definitely a tanking spec. Blood was like a DPS spec and was even used as a DPS spec still round about launch. And Unholy seemed to be this bizarre mix of things that maybe was suited towards PvP, I don't know. And it changed a lot. It changed hugely, and it changed hugely throughout the expansion as well. I think with Monks, when you compare that to Monks, the last new class, it didn't change hugely through the expansion. So it looked like they did do a good job of making sure they knew what direction they wanted to take it in. throughout that. And I'm hoping the same thing would apply to this, but it's still, you know, there could still be a lot of scope for changes. And it is very difficult to judge how it is going to play before we've got all of these abilities yet. Because a lot of, you know, the abilities we have at the moment are extremely limited, but they are clearly going to be much improved with some of these. So we just have to wait and see, really. It is just a shame that they insist on making us wait for these levels to get these talents when other classes don't. Other classes will have the full set of talents at level 100 and we don't. I'll say that could just be a feature for alpha. There's nothing to say that's how it's going to be when it goes live. So that's what I think of Demon Hunter at the moment, but I'm still going to keep it on my possible for main alt, so I am going to return to this. I am going to keep leveling it, albeit a bit more slowly, and I will update this at some point when some major changes come through, which I am absolutely certain there will be. And until then, I'll see you later.